Alrighty, so today we'll just do a quick review of our backlog, which is basically looking at the open issues and open PRs and make sure that we do something with them. We don't want to discuss the individual PRs so much. We just want to basically make a decision whether we should move them forward or close them. But before we go into that, there's one issue that I think we already have consensus on, and we just want to close this one, which is the secure exception proposal. So there was some discussion recently about what we do with exceptions in the context of app models, like server-sided app models, where exceptions themselves could leak information that is considered security sensitive. And there was a proposal to deal with that by introducing a new exception or changing the way messages are being retrieved by basically introducing a new property. And we talked about this with various people. You can see this on the right-hand side. There's 15 participants in this thread alone. There was some Twitter conversation, and there was, on the original issue that raised it, there was a bunch of communication back and forth as well. It seems that general consensus from the security experts is that if you leak any information in any exception, you're already in trouble. So the safest thing you can do in that model is disallow any exceptions to be propagated. And that's really relatively easy given the exception design that we have. You can either register handlers for unhandled exceptions based on the app model, or you can just have a global try-catch handler and do something meaningful there. Now, if your developers are basically leaking information by logging them, by doing like exception toString, or grab the message and write it into the response, which you sometimes see with PHP sites, then the security experts argue that you're already in trouble because there's no way the framework can offer protection against that. The only actionable feedback here would be that we basically remove all the useful information from exception objects, like the type, the stack trace, the message. And at that point, it becomes basically a Win32 API model where you just have an error code, and the only really helpful error code would be, oops, something went wrong, which is essentially e-fail in the COM days, which is basically a framework that we don't want to provide. So I think on our side, we will just close this issue as by design, or won't fix depending on how you see that. And I will probably do this later because I have no idea how to do this on the side. How do I do this? I just closed this issue right here. That was the thing I was looking for. Let me do the following. Let me actually just take a note and write it out what I just said in a more reasonable way, because I don't think I can do this right now. All right. And what I've basically done is I opened up, and then basically there's this other one that was related, which triggered the whole discussion, which was the duplicate key. And for this one, we will basically just merge it in now, given this consensus. So what I've done is, like, this list here is essentially all the issues on GitHub that are marked as ready for marked as ready for API review. So these are the ones that we probably should discuss, but we just want to make sure that they're actually in a state that we can discuss them. But this one, I guess you have some context on, I would suppose. Like, do you think this one is?
This one's pretty old, and it's sort of all-encompassing. We already discussed parts of it. Probably the other parts of it have already been obsoleted by changes that John Hanna's been making a flurry of changes.
I see.
So at this point, I'm not sure what the concrete
action item would be.
Action item for this one is. We probably need to revisit it, see what pieces haven't been done, and then discuss those if there are any that require discussion.
That makes sense. So basically, this one we said is partially addressed. / there's like identify what the pending work would be.
Yeah,
right?
Sort of there was a lot of things like you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, and there were some good ideas. Some of them I think have already been done.
Yeah, there are several unambiguous, very good ones. Many of them are implemented with some triggering discussions. They are probably not.
There's probably still some action items, so like some more work to be done on it. I just don't know what it is.
So would it be good to just basically break the work into individual work items and then just basically close this one to say here are the actual so we can actually knock them off one by one, so we don't have to repeat this exercise every once in a while. We did some more PRs.
I think that's reasonable. The work we're figuring out.
Yeah.
What's still open.
So who should do this? Is it you or the person who filed the PR? Sorry, the issue.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, we should just assign somebody so if we have an action item that it's clear like who is on point for doing it, so we don't have this thing just floating. All right.
Perfect. Is the testing which
yeah, and there was one thing we discussed previously around current collections. I'll go through it.
Sounds good. Then we have this one covered. Overloads to string trimming. I guess Tarek probably took a look at that. Let's just jump to the end. I don't we said anything there. So I guess this one is, somebody didn't do something on that. So I think this one is easy. We're just still not ready. Okay. I have to say, having two monitors with one mouse cursor is actually pretty painful. All right. This one is a duplicate, I guess, so we should probably close that then.
This is the one. This is the one that A. Kiplinger already. Yeah.
I see. So that's
one of your other devs with the PR, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's possible this is more encompassing than that. I think he's like, there are other things here. He wants to know an invalid cast exception, for example, what sorts of destination types are in general.
So he wants to expose them as type properties rather than just being the message?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe, I don't even know, is it in the message?
It is. I know that because when we had the security discussion on Twitter, Mark on our team showed me a screenshot of his Twitter app that was showing an exception, and it was embedded cast exception cannot convert object to type of Twitter status page or whatever. And then I made fun of that and said, well, at least we show you the types. Looks like a duplicate. Who should handle this one then? Is that you because you're already engaged with that with the person?
What's to handle?
Well, whether we should actually file specific items to actually deal with them, or we can. All right.
I think we should do this.
Something tells me you're a bit biased.
Perhaps get or red as well.
I see. That one would actually be nice.
Because then just keep a lookout. That's also useful.
Well, from my point of view, regardless of the perf gain, it's just a very handy API to have.
We already don't make any 30.
I mean, you can implement the extension method like that by hand, but you would be doing lookup twice.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So I would not expose it as an exception, as an extension method, because then we can never do the smarter thing without some strong coupling. So
this is only about adding it to dictionary then, or do we have other dictionary types we'd like to add?
It already exists in concurrent dictionary. I don't think we want to add anything to legacy types like hash table.
But like sorted set, you might want it.
Maybe.
sorry, which one?
Sorted set or
Oh, the sets, yeah.
Although most of the sets already have an add that returns Boolean, right? Hash set does.
Yeah, they have that pattern.
Yeah,
We just
yeah,
add. But funny enough, I think we added some things where you can get the actual value as it's stored in the set. Because if you have, for example, strings with, and you say like ordinal ignore case, then you still want to know what the original casing was as it was recorded in the set. And I think they may not actually have try-based things. So it may be worth looking into. I think I'm already on the hook for this one, so.
Yeah, and then as Vladimir was mentioning, there were some other follow-up comments on this about, well, in addition to triad, some of the other methods that we have on things like conditional weak table and concurrent dictionary, like the getter add, method would be nice to consider as well.
The conditional weak table is a type that I use quite a lot now, and I think the API service is somewhat close to terrible.
Well, that one is intentional, so
Yeah.
you're not supposed to use that.
But if you have to use them, it's still kind of nice that if the APIs wouldn't suck that much. Yeah.
Maybe the getter add or
Getter add.
the combination method should be considered separately. Split it out.
Yeah. What was it, get or add?
Concurrent dictionary has two. It has getter add and add or update. The primary reason they were added to concurrent dictionary is the same reason they exist on conditional weak table is there's synchronization involved internally. So in order to get the atomic nature of it, it needs to be built in. That said, there's still value in having them on for simplicity and ease of use. There's value in having them on non-thread safe types as well.
In
Agreed.
the current dictionary, I think there is one which takes a lambda. And that's probably the kill for dictionary.
It depends. I mean,
But the one which takes key and value.
yeah, I mean, the value of the value of taking the predicate or the lambda is you can avoid allocating the object if you
Sometimes it doesn't guarantee that. It will still sometimes.
on concurrent dictionary.
Yes.
But on dictionary,
On dictionary, it will
you
guarantee.
would guarantee it.
Maybe it's more useful.
But at that point, maybe it's you do the lookup twice or I don't know.
Yeah.
So for this proposal, are we going to list more APIs out on and change the proposal, or are we just going to leave?
I think it'd be nice. Personally, I like discussing the APIs individually, just so we don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like we decide to do one but not the other.
All right, so then this is for triad. I think we're
Yeah.
okay with that, but if we're going to have more, then we should have another proposal.
I think it's still helpful to have the overall picture though to make sure that it's consistent, right? If we decide we want to have convenience helpers, I think agreeing on that direction, yes or no, is helpful on its own. And then the other one is just work, right? Like add 5 or 6 APIs here and there, but
And they're all feasible and they're all easy. So
yeah, they're all like trivial. They could all be up for grabs actually.
Except for the desktop work.
Well, there's that, but that's true for pretty much any feature work we do, unless it's in a new self-contained thing, but on which we don't have that many. So, all right, so that was that one. This one is an interesting one because, yeah, funny enough, they actually apparently Unicode Center just went out and somebody just said, oh, we need to ref the web encoder API. So I think this one probably should be closed though.
We need to have a follow-up and look at the changes that were made.
Well, I assume that Christoph just addressed the feedback and didn't change it arbitrarily. But yeah, I'm also not sure where the APIs live. I think they still live in the lab repo.
These are web encoding, right? That's the difference.
Well, I think this was the new proposal that the ASP.NET team created.
Yeah, I think he moved them into CoreFX.
CoreFX or CoreFX Lab?
CoreFX.
Oh, really? I
I think
didn't.
they live in CoreFX.
Oh,
I
interesting.
thought that was the case as well.
Okay, so then they're probably. Cool stuff. All right.
Yeah, they're in CoreFX.
Sweet.
This was, we have two ways to get at the same thing for a bunch of these different properties. And in the contracts, we exposed both of the two ways for all the properties except for one where we just exposed one of the two ways.
So not necessarily something that we believe was good. Okay, so this one is basically, we should just take a look at that, I guess, or just do it? Or
I mean, I think we should just do it. Like,
so there's not any discussion or controversy that we need
I
to.
don't think so.
All right.
Like, you can already get at all of the information. We're not exposing anything that we hadn't exposed before. We're just providing another method to get at it. The only thing is, like, the thing is that we have to understand how the contracts, like how it impacts the desktop for the contracts, because the implementation is on the desktop, but if the contracts are facades that ship in box, like we just need to understand, because we're going to need to bump the contract version when we expose the API, and then how does that impact the facades?
Yep, the usual framework stuff. All right, so then I think we are through the list. This one we talked about, this one we talked about. These are all the ones that are marked as API addition. Can I exclude? I think I can, right? I can say API, what is it? And then I can just do this, right? All right. So these are all the ones that are marked as API addition, but are not marked as ready for review. So these are probably ones that may not be ready, or we just haven't marked them appropriately.
I don't think you're doing a very good job of curating.
So we could either walk this list, or we could look at, I think this one probably we just open for the giggles. But basically, we should probably just walk that list and make sure that they are in a decent state. Are there any things you're already aware of that we should look at first, or should we just walk through this? Because the list is pretty long, like 3 pages or 4 pages even.
The sort of newest list, which we probably want to do the other sort of.
You mean all list? All right, unless there's any more, I will just open them all in browser windows.
A lot of them aren't in a position to be reviewed properly yet.
Well, the other thing is, are they at least assigned to somebody? Yeah, let's tackle those first and then see what happens. All right. They're assigned to Eric. Eric hasn't looked at that, so I think this one is as good as it gets. Any pushback on that? Because my goal will basically be either there is some action or it is assigned, like one of the two. Because it's still not ready for review. Eric hasn't looked at that, and we'll just leave it at that. Yep. All right.
Are you looking through this to see if you mark some that are ready for review? Is that what you're
So what I try to do is like avoid action items on our side. Like, is this something where the guy who opened the PR has to deliver work? In that case, I would just take a note and say, do you want to come back to us? Make sure that we have at least somebody assigned on our side. And if we have somebody assigned and everything has been done and we just need to review it, I would just tag it. But just making sure that it's not in some stale state so that we don't.
These are just on backlog, I think. So.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's fine too. This one is assigned to Nick. Seems like it's in a decent state, but apparently it needs some more thinking. I would just leave it as it is. Flex method should be easier. I think this one was.
So around the signature reading. So
yeah,
it's going to be coming through soon with the signature reading and the PDB reading.
I think so too. So it's assigned. Yeah, I think this one we talked about, I'm pretty sure. There was an API review. Yep, so this one is assigned and we gave him action items. Regex options compiled. Pretty sure we talked about this. Holy crap. currently have not said. We did not have a meeting on that.
The issue is that we can't really support it in a good way on a lot of places. So that was what.
That's fair, but I mean, that seems like something we should actually discuss in more detail. So I would just mark it as ready for API review and then give it a shot.
Might has to be ready to actually talk about it.
Well, yeah, there's that. This one was basically us saying we don't want to do that, right? Yeah. So there's that.
Well, I mean, it seemed like that last comment implied there was an action item on the API review board. Did that question get answered, or?
Oh, that's a good point. I just read the first sentence. No, you're right. We did not. How do I? Oh, actually, that's a good point. I have that section in my doc. Make this. Hopefully I can close this over email. The string comparator for sorting numeric links logically. Yeah, I think this one is pending somebody making a concrete proposal. So it's not ready. Pending a static shuffle method to array and an instance method to list of T. Yeah, this one I think we discussed in depth. Looking at this email thread, it does not look like.
I remember correctly, we were just kind of leaning towards we didn't believe this is something we should have in the core.
I think so too.
Yeah, there's just too much policy baked into it that we can't.
So it seems that this basically we should probably just close, right?
Yeah, this seems like the kind of thing that would, if someone wanted to start a new CoreFX Labs project that was, focused on probability and statistics and had random number generators and apply that to shuffling and particular distributions and the like, I thought it'd be an interesting Labs project, but I don't think this belongs in this team.
By the way, I think that's true about the one you disclosed a minute ago too, which is that string comparator, where they wanted to basically do logical, like cultural aware comparisons, things like that. That's something that we should be baking into the core. So make sure CoreFX Lab has been possible.
Yeah.
Especially if we have NuGet packages for everything in CoreFX Labs and they're unsupported, but people can use them and improve them. Like, seems like a great place to have ECL-like libraries that people can evolve and use and take advantage of in their applications, but you don't have to consider it supported as part of the core.
Well, I think the idea of the lab is also to basically get something into supported once it matures, right? So it's basically,
if it gets to the point.
yeah, if it actually takes off, right? If it doesn't, then
Open source needs to be static.
no. I mean, it could live anywhere, right?
Yeah, there is no advantage whatsoever.
Okay, clamp method. I think that one. I remember that we had an API review on that one. No, I think I just said it looks interesting, but I don't think we actually looked at it yet. So we should probably just mark it as ready for API review. Actually give it a proper review. All right, allow the math methods to return float values.
We have there was some like work in progress PR about this sort of stuff on CoreCLR, right?
So we only have double, is that why?
Yeah, somebody was doing
someone was doing something that for all these methods that worked over floats and returned floats or something, like a mathf package or something.
I see. So that seems like we need
Prof was kind of working with the guy I thought who was doing this to figure out.
Yeah, it was more.
But it kind of stalled out,
point.
like I haven't seen anything
Yeah.
from it in a while.
Let me just mark that. All right, statistic distribution generator.
CoreFX Lab.
Yeah, that seems like something that is fairly specialized. So, yeah. Okay. Exposing extension methods for system array and the two convenience methods. The other ones we removed probably, right? Sounds to me like very similar in nature to the link improvements, right? Because you would think that if you would implement them actually as methods on an array, they could be more efficient than going through our enumerable. I mean, we pretty much did the same thing for mutable array. Like we basically have a whole bunch of methods that are specific to mutable array for the same reason.
So I'm not clear. What is supposing?
Like if you like on array, these things don't exist. Now, if you're on .NET 2.0, the methods don't exist at all. On later versions, they basically are implicitly there via link, right? Because they're defined over enumerable.
So the proposal is to add
Those
optimized
two
versions on array itself.
I think his goal is maybe to get them to .NET 2.0, because if he's still targeting 2.0, he doesn't have the methods at all, which I would ignore. But I think from my point of view, the performance benefit would be still available, right? Now, the question of whether we maybe should put these guys, but specializing arrays seems like a good idea in some of the cases. But that I would rather tie this to the link performance features, because that's the thing how I think about that, not as a back compat pack thingy. Because I don't think we care about .NET 2.0 back compat. Forward compat, whatever you want to call this.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused on some of these comments. Like one to see if there always produces a new array. Like, there's some of those do not produce arrays at all. In fact, less than produce arrays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess convert all, find all, and sort.
Produce array.
Maybe sort doesn't. Sort could be in place. Maybe just convert all and find all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you do, for example, if you do convert, right, you get back an enumerable, right? Now you have to, materialize this into a new array, but you don't know how big the array will be, right? Versus here, you actually know the size up front, so you can do it in place of the new array, right?
Well, I mean, you can do that inside inside select. Right? Select can look at the size of the input and manufacture. Convert all is select, right? It's the same thing.
Well, not really. It's like, well, I guess it kind of does. I think convert all is probably just a convenience. Yes, probably right.
So the proposal is to add this as extension methods.
I think the proposal will be like, first of all, getting clarity on what it is that we're trying to solve here. I don't think we care about .NET 2.0 compat, right? So I would.
We cannot add static methods to concrete array types.
Yes, there's that. But you can define extension methods that are specialized over, this T array, right?
Yes, they could as well live on link.
Yeah.
But like some of those things in terms of optimizations have already been done. Now today,
Yep.
in CoreFX, if you do array.select.toArray, that's now
Yep.
an optimized code
Yep.
that allocates the array of the right size, builds it in without allocating enumerables.
Yep.
Allow to have anything which statically binds to, like, if you do array dot something, we'll dynamically probe if it's array or not, but there is nothing which statically.
Yeah. Well, the session will aesthetically adds anything, right?
I think the only improvement that you have is something like convert all over select to array is we have an intermediate small enumerable allocation for the select call, which we can't optimize away. But I don't think that's worth adding new API service like this.
Yeah.
And certainly things like exists maps to any, and find maps to where first, or even first with a predicate. And,
well, I think the biggest problem is that even if you can do things in place in the new array, right, you would basically say, let's say array dot, and let's say convert, and then you say the end to array, right? The to array call, that because the last one just gives you back an enumerable, but let's say you want actually an array back, right? Then you have to do to array at the end, but to array cannot optimize, right? To array has to create a new array. You cannot just say, oh, if my input already is an array, just return that one. That would be a violation of the contract.
Sure, most of these would. The only one up there that looks like it would be in place would be sort.
Well, sorry, not in place of the old one, in place of the new one, right? You would allocate a new array. Because you can probe, is my input an array, right? Okay, then I can create a new array, run the convert delegate over that particular new array. But when I return that array, I return this enumerable.
Not with to array. To array returns an array.
Yes, but to array works on an enumerable, right? It always produces a new array. It will never give you back an array if the input already is an array. And that's by design.
If it were to give you back the same array, that would be an in-place manipulation. Then it gives you back a different array. That's exactly what.
Think about this code path, right? Like think of like if I say, right, let's say you have an array, right? You have, let's say, a bunch of ints, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, let's say, R, right? And you say a dot, let's say, convert, right? With some delegate here, right? Which takes you, let's say, X, and you do something with that, right? Let's say you cast this to a float, right?
Sure.
Now this guy gives you back an enumerable of float, right?
Okay, that's the explicitly exposed type, but that doesn't prevent the internal implementation from knowing what the concrete type is and having that wrap the actual array, which is exactly what we do in select to array today.
I see. So you basically forward that array.
Yes.
So that when to array actually gets it,
it's already
because if you just
sees it's an array.
If you just selecting, you want to
I
delay
see.
execution. But if you're gonna do to array anyways, then there is no point in delaying.
That makes sense. So basically, I think the gist is like if they really handle the performance dynamically, then I think there's no value in adding a static surface area to do that.
The only value is there are a few checks and maybe an allocation that you could avoid with something like that, but it doesn't seem worth the service. Now, we want to go through and make sure that all the relevant optimizations are in place. Like that select to array path was only just added in the last 2 months.
Yep.
I think you would lose performance before each.
Yeah.
I suppose this one for the boner, right?
Yes.
Definitely.
All right. That's an interesting one. I think this one we have enough data to actually have an API review over, right? I don't see why not.
I think Java allows that, and it is used. I've seen people setting different load factors.
Yeah.
But it's sort of implementation that
Yeah, I was gonna say
the number.
Does our implementation even take a load factor into account? I'm not sure.
It does not.
Well, that's why I'm saying this. We could have an API review that could be very quick to say if we don't need it because we can't support it. All right. Add option to allow for unordered results from transform block.
Yeah, I think we should do this. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But this is basically, this is in data flow.
I would think.
No, you can ignore the code sample, which is someone showing how you might see it today. Basically, we have ordering implicitly enabled. Data goes into a transform block, regardless of whether parallelism is employed by the transform block or not. The data comes out in the same order.
Mm-hmm.
That forces on if parallelism is if there's no parallelism, that's easy, right? Data comes
sure.
in, data comes out. If there is parallelism, we have to implicitly put a little reordering buffer at the end to ensure that the data comes out in the right order. The request is to say, I don't care about order.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend time reordering.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But this probably involves a new API, right?
Yeah, I was asking how they thought it should be exposed. I have to think more about it, but I think I would probably add an option to one of the existing. There are these options bags that you pass in.
Yep.
That would probably just be another either enum value or property or something on one of those.
It's assigned to you already, right? Yeah. So either you or the original asker can design the API. We can take a look at that. The API proposal will not replace the option, some and none. Yeah, this one is an interesting one because I think we talked about this a million times. I don't think we have a good proposal for it yet, though. Yeah.
This particular one seems to go right along with Matt's recent proposal for non-nullable reference types.
It is and it isn't, right? I mean, it's mostly complementary, but yeah, I mean, it is related.
I mean, that's going to be our best shot of getting the support that even close to what they're looking for here. I think.
Well, it's more than that because I mean, like, if you think of, for example, reference types can be null and non-null, right? But how do I differentiate between somebody wants it to be null or it doesn't have a value? Like for default arguments, right? Like it's basically a new state, which is it's undefined, it's uninitialized. It's the absence of a value, not a specific sentiment, sentinel rate.
Like this would be a nicer way of implementing default parameters.
Yeah.
Where it's not that you bake in the default value and then the client must pass that value, but it would be up to the receiver actually to put the default value. Client should just give you one of these. Like say, I don't have value.
So did Rosen end up using option of T? Or did you guys remove that? Do you know?
We didn't.
Mm.
It was.
I see.
It was additional indirection.
Because at some point I think I saw the APIs like where like the withers, where you would basically allow people to set all the properties with one method. I think they at some point had option of T overloads, so they could differentiate between I want this property to be null versus I don't want to update the property at all.
I don't remember. I think in one of the initial implementations, the syntax tree had lots of optional things which would return optional, and there is just a lot of indirection.
Yeah, I think
so
that's
that
probably
was
true.
simplified into just having opt suffixes on the API, and then people didn't like that.
Yeah,
just return null.
All right. So this one, needs some more work, I guess, on our side to come up with something. The core generic connection type should include a priority queue. I think we have heard that one before. This one is a priority queue design surface, but I'm not sure handles that all, but it looks pretty complete.
We actually have priority queue. I think sort at least is a priority queue based internally.
This is just a proposal. Does it actually have an implementation too?
I don't think there's
no. That seems like something that we can probably take a look at and then decide whether we should turn this into a PR or not.
So for something like this, that's something that it's assigned to you, so you'll.
Yeah, just
on that, or?
Yeah, basically, what I would think is we would just mark this as API ready for API review. Talk about whether we want to add this type, regardless of the specific surface area, right? Because I mean, as you said, like, should we just tell people like we have existing data structures you can use for that, or should we add a first class thing, make a decision, and then the guy can actually turn this into a PR and actually provide an implementation, and we can review that one. That's how I would do this. Because this is just an issue. It's just like, do we think we need a priority queue data structure? Yes or no? It's relatively simple to answer.
Can't actually use sorted list as a priority.
Yeah, because it's a more complex thing. But
Yeah.
internally, it's implemented as
On
a
top of one.
yes. So you think like, why don't we expose the simpler primitive?
There's just
But
the
we
API
already
service.
have an implementation.
That's a good point. Yeah. Blah 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 blah. So I don't think I mean it's fine, but I don't have actually any context. Does anybody know what they have, what the problem is? I think what the guy says is that using reflection of generic types is a pain in the butt. Give me some more convenience overloads to deal with that. I think somebody with some more knowledge about reflection needs to take a look at that. Yeah, I should probably do that. This one, number 614. All right. We have that. Okay. Well, it's been the last 5 minutes to just finish the first page at least. Which may be challenging, though. Let's see. This one is easy. I would just say no.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we need to establish CoreFX as the one and only way to get to libraries.
Like the one possibly interesting thing would be if there's changes or things we can add to CoreFX to make it easier for having exchange types that could be used by Entity Castle. Like, so if there's some concrete proposals around that, I think that would make sense to try to do. But
yeah. All right. String equals isn't intuitive and forces us to do the ordinary ignore case thingy. Yeah, that's actually true, but I don't know how we would do that easily.
the proposal was to add some other overload, I believe.
We talked about this at one point. I think with general consensus is we need to kind of do a holistic view, like look at all the string APIs and try to reconcile them, make sense of them.
We could just have a new method convention that just does ignore case, right? Which is basically what David said. I think would be reasonable. I don't like the bool versions that we had before because what does that mean, right? Is it case sensitive or is it case insensitive? Like I can't remember. Exactly. All right, implement the generic enum parse method. Actually, I think this one probably has enough data to actually talk about this in a review meeting. Because we can at least say, is this a direction you want to go after, and if so, what that would look like. All right, implement the generic enum parse method. Yeah, this one I'm always surprised if we never had that one. Anybody know why we never ended up doing that? Probably not, right? All right. But I guess this is something we can probably discuss as well. Enough data to make a decision. Add non-throwing methods to convert class. I think same thing, right? Like we can just make a quick decision whether that's something we want to do or not. Give some
it's useful, but is there other way of doing that?
That's essentially the question, right?
If there isn't, then why not?
When we're marking these ready for API review, we're just pushing them off to the subsequent meeting.
So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I can, basically what I generally want to do, and I think I never did a good job, but basically the idea is that ready for API review is things that I can actually put in an agenda, and then make sure that I cluster them accordingly so that the meeting itself has some better focus than just a random backlog review where we just brush through like 20 items, 30 items. If that makes sense. Because I don't think there's a good way of doing that otherwise. Everybody want to make sure that the right people in the room can actually make the decision. Add on generic version of enum try parse. I think we just. Oh, that's funny. It's clearly something that's related to the one I just had. So. Looks like it has enough data on it. Same thing. Clearly somebody's working with enums a lot. Looking at Steven right now.
Yeah. There's definitely value in such methods. The problem is there's also a fair amount of policy as to exactly how you want things to behave, which I think makes it tricky to include in core libraries. I mean, on the blog post reference, I think I have like 6 different implementations that have pros and cons. There's definitely value, and I just don't know whether it actually belongs, where it would actually belong in CoreFX. And it doesn't take a whole lot of code to do the basic thing.
Yeah, should we just basically have a meeting to establish a principle to say, look, if there's many ways to do it, we just pick one, and then if you really care about the other ones, you just implement the other ones yourself, or is this a better way to not give people any implementation because there's money to choose from?
That's one end of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is you do nothing and everyone implements it themselves regardless. Yep. A step up from that is you pick one, and if it's not the one that people need, they implement it themselves. Trouble is, if you pick the wrong one or it leads people down a bad path or whatever. Yep. The other end of the spectrum is you try and expose it with enough knobs that everyone is satisfied, which is complex, and you probably still miss some cases.
Yeah.
So I don't have a good answer here.
You want to deal with cancellation stuff.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
So what do you want to do then? What do you want to basically ask the person who opened it to come up with a more precise definition of what he wants, or?
I mean, it'd be good to understand how ASP.NET is using it. I'm assuming that's why he's asking for it.
And I think, so I guess, ask for more data essentially.
Should we do that, or should we just do your suggestion, which is push it to CoreFX Lab and let somebody build up some things around it, and if it gives enough weight, then we'll start going and thinking about things.
I would love to. I mean, there's a whole bunch of async synchronization primitives, async combinators, async, various operations that you might want to see. We've done a bunch of them in that parallel extensions project that we had from parallel computing a while back, which has just been sitting out there. I've been meaning to make it more officially open source for a while. We could dump a bunch of that up onto CoreFX Lab. People can contribute it themselves.
Seems like a reasonable question.
Yeah.
There is also some sharp work for like async enumerable and just language support for async enumerables. It's probably
Yeah.
needs to be coordinated.
All right. So then there's that. And registered IO extensions.
This is all about networking. And Chris and David and some of the guys from the networking team have been responding.
Okay, so this one is. So it's basically just asking for this to be exposed, right? So I guess this one has an assignee, and the discussion seems to be going. So I think this one is fine. All right. So then at least we reviewed the first page. There's apparently like 4 more pages to go. I will probably, hopefully, spend some time this week to actually do that. But I think we have enough things on the backlog now to actually set up a bunch of meetings to look at these things like in blocks, and then just make sure that we can actually close on them. Is there anything more that you guys expect to show up anytime soon? Like major things you need to review?
Nothing major. Metadata readers is only the biggest one, and that's coming.
There are those environment ones that people have been asking for.
Those are minor ones, but yeah, Backlog is working on some
Like environment, like dot.
exits and like command line orders and stuff like that.
I see. Yep, that makes sense. All right, then that's it for this one. If I can actually get my mouse back to actually close the meeting.